and welcome to the Archaeological Society of Delaware's Digging Delaware series. Here, I'll be speaking with Delaware archaeologists about their experiences and how they got into archaeology. Today, I'm speaking with biological anthropologist Raquel Fleskes from UPenn. So welcome, Raquel. Why don't you give us a little background on who you are?
Hi, Curtis. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to be here. I am a PhD candidate in the Department of Anthropology at the University of Pennsylvania, and my specialty is in molecular genetics. So my work focuses primarily on trying to understand the population history of Eastern colonial North America. And I do this through two main approaches. The first is through the extraction of DNA from archaeological skeletal remains, and this is also called ancient DNA. We work a lot with communities to try to answer their questions about their population history, where they come from, and also how people are related to each other. And we also can do this working with modern communities or living people today who trace ancestry to the colonial period, and trying to look and answer questions about relatedness, kinship, and ancestry more generally.
So what made you want to get into anthropology?
Well, it's a little bit of a long story. I've always been interested in anthropology since I was really young. My friend bought me a book, Anthropology for Dummies, back when I was in high school. Those little yellow covered books that are usually explained with computer processing. And even though it was pretty basic, I was really enraptured with the understanding that anthropology is focused on studying human history. Who are we? What does it mean to be human? But doing so from a multitude of different perspectives and a multitude of different methods. So I was really taken with the fact of, how can we use something like genetics to kind of take a slightly different view of human history and human migration? How does applying a slightly different method change the story or kind of open up new ways of knowing and to understanding our shared human history?
So, in a minute or less, what's some of your current research?
Well, doing work both in Avery's Rest down in Delaware, near Lewes, Delaware, and then also in Charleston, South Carolina. Our current research right now is focusing on the Avery's Rest site, actually. So in previous work, we focused on doing pilot research on the mitochondrial DNA of the 11 individuals that were found at Avery's Rest. This is a 1680 site, 1700 site located near kind of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. So we wanted to do mitochondrial DNA testing to look and kind of see, is their DNA preserved in these individuals? And what does it show us about maternal ancestry? Because mitochondrial DNA is a special kind of DNA that just shows us maternal inheritance, right? So what we found out was that individuals are both of European and African descent there. So what we're doing right now is we're doing whole genome sequencing on these individuals. So we're going to be able to look at the 23 chromosomes, our biparental ancestry, to understand where do individuals come from, how are they related to each other at the site, are we seeing kind of father-child relationships or any aunt-uncle relationships there. So we'll be able to get a very much more refined and nuanced understanding of where people are coming from and how they relate to each other at Avery's Rest in the next few months.
Yeah, and you guys have put out quite a few articles on the Avery's Rest site and some of the work you've been doing. So it's all available out there. So
yeah, we are working really closely with the Smithsonian Institution with Dr. Douglas Owsley and Karen Brohelride, and then also with the Archaeological Society of Delaware. And so we have a wonderful write-up in Forbes Magazine, so maybe we can link it to the bottom of this video, which provides a really great synopsis of all the work that's been done at the site so far.
Yeah, definitely. So what's one of your best or worst field stories?
Oh man, and thinking about this question, it's really hard for me to pick a worst field story because I just really enjoy all the times I'm in the field and working with communities or on a dig site when the rare opportunity does come. But I think the best field story I have is when we're working down in Charleston and on the Anson Street African Burial Project. So like I mentioned previously, this is an 18th century African descended burial ground that was uncovered on accident during construction in downtown Charleston back in 2014. So that's now about 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. and we were working directly with the Gull Society and the community down there, and they wanted to do a multi-dimensional scientific inquiry as to who are these individuals and where do they come from. So after the project was completed, and they were reinterred back into their original resting ground. And so the Gull Society, and we planned a very elaborate ceremony where we had almost 500 people in attendance, multi-faith spiritual ceremony, and an Ngungun masquerade, and really powerful was our inclusion of local artists and artists from around the US, where they hand dyed indigo. And so we sent those indigo fabrics to us, and we wrapped the individuals in the indigo to them to be reinterred. It was just a really powerful moment, and really reminded me of why I do the work that I do, is because of this community engagement aspect to it, bringing archaeology and anthropology to the public, and kind of and making sure that individuals that we work with inevitably end up back where they came from.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, we don't get those kinds of opportunities very often in archaeology and anthropology, so that had to be very special.
It really was. It really was. It was definitely, I think, one of those once in a lifetime type of opportunities.
So Raquel, what's one of the coolest things you've ever learned from an anthropological project?
Well, I think probably one of the most interesting things was in the Avery's Rest project, because, going into it, working with Dr. Owsley at the Smithsonian, we had an understanding that we had both European and African descended individuals at the site. But we had no idea where these individuals were from or how they related to each other. So when we did our initial mitochondrial DNA testing, we found out that the European individuals were related to each other, but the African individuals were not. And so this was a very stark, for me, glance and understanding into racial inequality during the 17th century, thinking a lot about the experience of having to live in the frontiers of Delaware, where there's not a lot of people around, and yet, the European individuals had the luxury of being in a small family unit, whereas it does not seem the African individuals had that same. So for me, it was a lot of thinking about, what is the, inherent violence of, separation of families. It was a really powerful way of thinking and kind of seeing trauma and interpreting trauma in the archaeological record through a slightly different lens using DNA. So maybe not one of the coolest things I've ever learned, but definitely I think probably one of the most impactful things is, how do we use DNA to really kind of decode and kind of unravel these traumas that are often hidden in the archaeological record previously. So
Yeah, very powerful. So Raquel, our last question for you today is, how are you handling self-quarantine during COVID-19 right now?
Well, I think it goes in ups and downs. Everything with quarantine, our lab is shut down. So mostly we've all been working remote. So I've been finding lots of outside time is really important. Taking walks has been really great. I've also learned how to knit, so I don't know what that says about it, but, I've been enjoying the downtime as much as possible, and just trying to know that this is, even though it's a little bit of a, it's not a great situation, but there are small blessings in it, and spending time with family and kind of getting a little bit of quiet time is always rejuvenating.
Well, Raquel, thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Curtis. I really had a great time.
Well, to everyone watching, we'll see you next time.